Hey everyone, Leo Azure, another Johnson Lightning episode. I have Patrick here with me to teach me how to run Cassandra on Kubernetes. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, Leo Azure, another Johnson Lightning episode, and I have Patrick, my friend, here with me. Patrick, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Lior?
I'm doing best. Just came back from Ignite. It's the first episode after Ignite before a long vacation, so that's always great. So you're the lucky one, Patrick. I wanted to talk to you today because of a couple of reasons. One, we have some cool partnership going on with you and the folks from DataStax, and also Cassandra and Kubernetes. This is an area that I have just a bit of experience on, but I'm curious to learn more. Before we go on and nerd out all those good stuff, who you are, what is it that you do?
Yeah, so I'm Patrick McFadin. I work at DataStax. I'm a principal technical strategist, which is a really cool thing. But my job for the last 14 years has been working on Cassandra. I'm a Cassandra committer, and I also wrote a book called "Cloud Native Managing Cloud Native Data on Kubernetes." You can find it over at O'Reilly. So I might be ready to talk about this today.
For sure. Here's the deal. Databases and Kubernetes in general is an area. Obviously, everyone's got their own opinion, and as someone who's been working on this space for so long, right? Obviously, I don't have the amount of experience specifically on Cassandra and Kubernetes. So I was curious to talk to you about this. Talk to me for a second about the evolution of the project and how do you see people are adopting this? What is the community telling you?
Well, it's interesting you should say that. I've been working on data on Kubernetes, but that is a topic for a while, and Kubernetes has been around for a long time. It's just has never really been a strong point for data because of reasons, and that's changed over the past few years. And it's been efforts from a lot of different angles, like from storage and networking, and how we deploy containers that are more stateful. So the time is now, and some of the largest users, largest Kubernetes users are already doing data. But I think we're at the point now where everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
So if we look at the last Cassandra survey, we do a user survey of the project. A
Mhm.
majority of people said that they want to move to Kubernetes.
Yeah. I remember KubeCon a few years back when the conversation around stateless, stateful was still hot, right? I think that it
Yeah.
was like a big debate that was going on. This is like relatively in the early days of Kubernetes. And what I'm hearing from you that those conversations are kind of in the past, but not so much. So you guys have been doing some interesting stuff in DataStax, and was curious to hear what you guys are up to.
Yeah. So, I mean, it starts out, I have this slide here that shows Kate Sandra, which is another open source project, but we
Mhm.
started Kate Sandra as a project to specifically address running Cassandra and Kubernetes. When you're running Cassandra, as you well know, you don't just do a little bit. It's not one thing. It's a group of things, and Kubernetes needs orchestration for that. We have an operator, but the Kate Standard project has been very popular in open source and has we've learned a lot along the way. I should also mention that DataStax we deploy Cassandra on Kubernetes, so we've been learning that as well. And so this, I'm sure this diagram looks pretty familiar to you. I mean, yeah, how many of these have
Yeah,
you seen in your life, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
for
this is
sure.
so what we've done is we've taken this idea and this is and I'm gonna give you a bit of an eye chart here, so I apologize in advance. This is a config file that is just full of information about how you want to set up a running Cassandra cluster with maintenance, like using Reaper for doing repairs and Medusa for backups and
Mhm.
all these things that you think you may need in a virtual data center of Cassandra. So, um, I don't know about you, but how good are you at editing YAML?
You know, uh, when it comes to deployments on Kubernetes in general, right? And the more complex, or I should say, the more comprehensive the solution is, the more complex it is to orchestrate this. And throughout the years, we've seen a lot of solutions that are trying to do that. And I think that in the context of Cassandra, and I'm just comparing that to other databases that are out there that are running on Kubernetes. I think that at the end of the day, and I really like the eye chart just because of the fact that it kind of tells us what not to do or how not to do things, right?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that in the context of databases in Kubernetes in general, it's just been a fascinating area to keep track on because of the age that we are at right now. We've seen a lot of people are looking at how do I, obviously, I was trying not to do name drop for AI here, but I guess that's inevitable.
Got to do it. Yeah.
Got to do it. And we've been talking to a lot of people regarding the importance of data, and when you see a lot of solutions that are trying to leverage distributed models, right? And Kubernetes obviously being there, as kind of the de facto standard for how you go and do distributed applications in the cloud and outside of the cloud for that matter. And I think that seeing all these solutions evolve, it's kind of interesting to see. So specifically in the notion of Cassandra, what is it that is unique about this in order to accommodate whether these type of workloads or just generally speaking, like persistent applications or persistent data oriented applications?
I mean, it always comes back for me. It comes back to the end user who's going to use it and reducing the toil. I mean, if
Mhm,
Kubernetes wasn't reducing the toil or making it easier to run larger amounts of infrastructure, then why are we doing
mhm.
it?
Yeah.
I believe firmly that progress in technology is when we have the ability to be more lazy. So don't make it harder.
Yeah.
um, and that the YAML file is probably a good example of that. But what I think what we're doing is we're figuring out ways to compose very complicated infrastructure into
Mhm,
units that can be scaled appropriately for whatever we're trying to do. Um, and then we're turning clouds and in the hardware into commodity like we've always been promised.
mhm.
And you're paying for compute, network, and storage. That's the three
Yeah.
things that you're going to be paying for.
So
So,
as a big automation geek, like how do you guys go about this? Like how does this solution look like?
yeah, so if we take a look at this, like this diagram shows like that unit that we're talking about. Like this is
Mhm,
the scaling unit, and we have these nodes that can be one or 1,000. And if we look at the units that we're creating, this is what we're doing. And what we've done at DataStax, and to help our larger enterprises do this more efficiently, we have a product called HCD, and that, this is what we're talking about later. This is a big part of this. This is hyper
mhm.
converged database, and this is we're using HCI. Now you can see this diagram turned into an eye chart quickly, but it's just copy and paste the layers. It's just more and more and more of those. Um, and this complexity is hidden. And the more we can hide it, I think the better we are in the long run, because that gives people the ability to do more with less. So, that takes us to where we are today. We're working
Mhm.
with Microsoft to make that happen.
So I know that you guys are starting to roll out a new marketplace offering, which
Mhm.
designed to simplify, what we're seeing here, or like you mentioned, like to mask that complexity from the end user, right? So how does that look like?
Yeah, so this diagram shows it's a nice block diagram that shows what we're offering. So
Mhm,
the marketplace is it's just a wonderful place for users to try things out, but also get there quickly. If you're going to do a POC on a cluster somewhere, the marketplace is great. But what we're also talking about is being able to use the Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes cluster. So you can run that anywhere you have Azure Arc enabled. And that's what we have today. That's what we're announcing today is when you use this marketplace offering, you can deploy it where you need it using Azure Arc. And it's pretty cool. We've been playing around with it for about a month now, maybe 3 weeks. And the thing that I love about it is it's a click, some parameters, and you get a running cluster, and it's being managed in the cloud or wherever you have your Azure Arc cluster or Kubernetes cluster. But
yeah,
it's so much easier, you know?
yeah,
Um, so
yeah. I
yeah, I
think
thought
that
maybe we
yeah. Yeah, I want to see that in action. I got to tell you, when we're thinking about Arc-enabled Kubernetes and that extensibility model, right? The use of extensions and now being able to offer this to being able to offer this to customers using that integration. That's super cool. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you about, because for a while now, in the Arc enabled Kubernetes space, we didn't have a way to offer this type of integration to interesting ISVs like yourself. So now that is coming to life. So that's super cool.
Yeah, and we have, common users, common customers that are like, hey, how do I do this the easy way? They're not looking for more complexity. This is it.
Right.
So yeah, let's take a look at the solution. What do
Yeah,
you get
please.
out of it? So when you enable the marketplace, when you go through the marketplace, what you get is this interface. It's called Mission Control, and Mission Control is a front end for deploying clusters. So you can see I can have a list of clusters here, so I can run more than one cluster. And I can run different types of clusters as well. So I'm using HCD, the hyperconverged. That's what really utilizes Kubernetes very well. But you can also run just open source Cassandra if you want as well. Um, but what this gives you this is a window into the backend infrastructure, and it makes it very easy. And this is very opinionated for a Cassandra user. So if you use Cassandra before, a lot of these things are going to make sense to you. Like, here's a data center, here's racks, all of those translate. So when you're setting up a 3-node cluster, this is a 3-node cluster. Um, it's all in front of you, but it gives you some basics that are very important, such as observability. Now, this ties into what's happening in the backend in the Kubernetes cluster. We just expose a lot of the metrics that are appropriate for
Mhm.
Cassandra. How many of these graphs are you familiar with?
Yeah,
Probably a lot of these, huh?
yeah, for sure. And you guys are doing this via kind of the metrics API and just exposing that in your interface, correct?
Yeah, and there are some metrics that are built into Cassandra that we could pull directly from Cassandra as well.
Hmm.
So it's meant to be a composite, but again, very opinionated for a Cassandra point of view.
Yeah,
So read and write latencies or whatever the operator wants to know about, right?
yeah,
Um, and how much CPU utilization am I using? Do I need to scale this thing?
yeah,
So but there's, thinking beyond just a running cluster, which is, that's a cool trick, but it's also being able to manage it internally. And so, for instance, we have our CQL console that runs, and you can you can log directly into the cluster itself into the backend using CQLSH, and you could run commands just like you're sitting at a command line. But this is all wherever it's running, you can run it from here. So I can, describe key spaces. And this is now, as a Cassandra operator, this should be a very familiar place for you to operate.
yeah.
Uh,
Patrick, the thing here that I really like as you're showing this to me is this notion of the fact that you can have both the operator and the database administrator looking at the same interface. And this is something that you should not take for granted, right? A lot of the time you have these type of personas that are just looking at different things. The operator is looking at the Kubernetes backend, right? The database administrator is looking at this. And on the database level. But another thing that I wanted to call out with you guys integrating with the marketplace is now this thing can be automated because of that extensibility model of Arc enabled Kubernetes and the fact that you can describe this entire thing in Bicep for that matter and just deploy the cluster with the extension with Cassandra. And this can also be part of a CI process or pipeline, that someone would want to integrate to.
yeah, no, I see that as a really strong use case. It's easy to set up in your CI/CD pipeline and tear down. It's that agility that people really want.
Yeah. Cool. Patrick, congrats on the integration with the Kubernetes marketplace. And for the Jumpstart audience, we're going to leave all the descriptions down below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and we're going to see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.